Thank you. That was just phenomenal. That's my jam. I love that style of music. You two, this whole group. Oh, you guys know how lucky you are? Man. And then to have Reverend Carla, one of these shining stars in the Unity movement, to come here and to facilitate this process with you all, and the expertise and her lifetime experience in Unity, that is such a blessing. Do you know how much of a blessing that is? And then you're stuck with me, just this hack up here who's going to choke through a sermon. No, but I also want to recognize your leadership team and your staff at this incredible facility here. I'm just like losing my words because this is just awe-inspiring. Do you know what you have here? Do you know how special it is? Well, Carla is going to be facilitating you on a journey. And it's a really powerful process, and it's a really amazing place that you're in right now. And there's always an opportunity in life to either choose to be who you are and just settle into that, or to challenge yourself to go to the next level. And right now, Spirit's in a place right now in this organization to say, are you ready to go to the next level? And we could just say, you know what, we're kind of okay with where we are. We'll just kind of status quo, business as usual. Or we could say, you know what, the world's calling all of us to step up a little higher, and we're going to answer that call. We're going to do the work, because there was a time maybe decades ago when we could sit around and say, enough is enough. We're doing okay. But do you think that's the type of world we're in anymore? No, we're not. The world is saying each and every one of us has to be willing to rise higher if we expect to raise the rest of us to move up with us. So that's the opportunity you have here. I'm really excited for the journey you're on right now. I'm really excited for you all. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So if we've got my slides, and put them up there. I'm going to start off with a little question, if you're okay with that. You okay with questions? All right, good. So the first question is, why am I here? And that's not as big a question as you're thinking, not in terms of like, why am I on this planet? Why am I in this existence? But a little bit smaller in terms of, why am I in this room today? Why am I part of this organization? What am I doing here? Am I here to socialize? Am I here to just check a box that I went to church on Sunday? Is there a bigger reason that I'm here? Or am I here because I have a calling to grow? Am I here because I feel a movement of spirit that's asking me to be a part of something greater than myself? Because sometimes we're just a part of an organization just to be there and socialize and drink coffee and have some cake and then go about our day. But every once in a while we find a group of individuals where we connect, and all of a sudden we realize we're here for a greater purpose. Is anyone else feeling that? Is anyone feeling that buzz moving through the room, that something special is happening here? Well, it is a special thing. And so I want to talk a little bit about what happens in our lives on this journey we call the spiritual path. So a lot of times we think about this as a linear path. We think about bliss as this thing that's over there, it's out there, and here I am, and there's this path from me to bliss. I'm on this spiritual journey, I'm trying to get over there, right? We have this linear way of thinking, so we think like, here I am, it's there, maybe I'll arrive there when I'm 145, I don't know, but at some point in time, I'll get to that point of bliss. But the reality of the whole situation is that it looks a little bit more like this. Some of you already know that. You wish like, oh, I just evenly progressed along this spiritual path. I was a nicer person. I was a more aware person. I was a more connected person. I just kept going forward. I had no more hardships in life. I had all the beautiful relationships. But that's just not how it works, right? We recognize like, oh, I'm feeling really good one day. This is rocking. I got this figured out. And then boom, I get hit and I get knocked down. And maybe it takes me a couple more weeks to get back up, and oh, no, I'm good again. And then I get knocked over to the side, or I get distracted. I'm off in this direction, or I'm off in that direction. And really, it's just this purely twisty journey we're on. And that part becomes confusing to us because we think linearly. And the biggest problem is that we think of bliss as something at the end of a journey. And whether you call it bliss, you call it God, you call it enlightenment, we put it as this thing that's somewhere out there that I'm trying to get to. And the problem with that is it separates us from it. And it makes it somewhat inaccessible, not only to ourselves, but to others, because it's out there. And so we think, well, if I'm not up in the Himalayas meditating all day long, I'm not really going to get to bliss, because that's kind of where it sits, somewhere in a cave somewhere. You have to be to find it. Cold, hungry, skinny. Bliss seems always to be attached to skinniness, I guess. But really, this is a better visualization of bliss when you look at a two-lane road. We're right here in the lane of struggle. We've chosen this lane. And right next to us is the lane of bliss. It's not that bliss is sitting at some distant time, way down the future, when we're a totally different person. The reality is that bliss is right here, right next to us at every given moment of the day. And we can either choose to step into bliss or not. But you recognize when you analyze the human mind and how we make choices, thousands, literally thousands of times a day, we choose to suffer instead of experience bliss. And most of these are unfortunately subconscious choices. The choices we don't know we're choosing to make, such as, I don't like that person's hat. These type of people always cut me off when I'm driving. This house is falling apart. I don't look good in these pants. These shoes don't fit. I'll never be good enough for that job. I don't have enough money. These are thousands and thousands of thoughts, which are actually choices every single day to suffer instead of to joy, to have joy. And so we do this all day long. But has anyone in your life, any of you here, ever at some point, even for just a microsecond, just had a moment where you went, oh, there it is. You might have been lost in a hobby, an activity, squeezing a baby. You might have been meditating, whatever it is. You just had a split second where you just went, there it is. Raise your hand if you've had that experience, just so we can see that it's not so rare. All right, so if that has ever happened to you, even for the slightest split microsecond, it proves to you that it's not somewhere out there. It's actually right here. And for a split second, I stopped judging and hating and being angry about the world, and I forgot to make a decision to be in the lane of suffering, and I accidentally just stepped into bliss. And I probably in that moment went, ooh, this is nice. Oh, but that person's horrible. I went, or probably more likely what happened was you slipped into that and said, this is awesome. I don't deserve it. And it's a subconscious choice. We don't consciously want to suffer. But as the Buddha would say life is suffering. When you talk about how amazing bliss is, no matter how good you've got it in life, inherently life is suffering. Because life is built on these micro decisions of suffering. But it is possible to consciously start making different choices, to start training your subconscious mind to start making different choices, so you're not fighting 1,000 decisions a day to suffer. And of course, we know if that we're choosing to suffer ourselves, we're causing those around us to suffer. Because someone who shows up in a consciousness of suffering is putting that consciousness out around them. So now we're kind of dragging everyone down into the lane of suffering as opposed to the lane of bliss. But we can start using unity principles, denial, affirmations, prayer, meditation, gatherings like this to start consciously training the mind to choose more of bliss. That's an amazing thing. That's what fundamentally our founders discovered. We can actually change the way we think, which then changes what we experience. But is it possible that there is unequal access to God? That's what I thought. I was raised in unity, which would just basically say everyone's got equal access to God. But then you look how life is designed. Society is designed. So if we have this two-lane road here, bliss, God is just sitting right here. But every time I judge myself, I put a little brick in the road between me and bliss. Say, I'm not good enough, and I lay a little brick down. And I say, I'm not worthy enough, and I lay a little brick down. My body's not healthy enough, and I lay a little brick down. And I am building a wall between me and God. Fundamentally, that at some point in my life, I'm going to have to try to start breaking through. But here's the thing. I've had to come to realize, as a white, middle-class, heterosexual, cisgender male, I've got a lot of privileges in society. Because fundamentally, it was designed by people like me to favor people like me and to suppress people unlike me. So it took me a lot of internal work and a lot of study and research to realize that, yes, I'm putting bricks down, but society, for some folks, is also putting bricks down. Society is saying, no, in fact, you are not good enough. You are actually not welcome here. You're actually, by the color of your skin, not welcome here, not allowed, not equal as. Because of your gender or gender identity, you are not welcome. You do not have access. And so not only is our own negativity putting down bricks, but now you have a societal system that's laying bricks down on top of those bricks for some people. That doesn't seem very fair, does it? Now remember, God hasn't gone anywhere. God is still right here, but now I'm putting down mental blockages, and now you have society adding to those mental blockages, adding to those physical blockages for some people more than others. That's not very fair. So for me in that position, I've realized for myself as a person of privilege, just because of my color of my skin, the gender, and my class, and my social status, I have an obligation to help remove bricks when I don't have as many bricks between me and bliss. When we look at the situations of the world, a mother who's really just trying to get food into her child's mouth, is she really thinking about how much time she has to do her yoga today? As opposed to someone who has their own yoga studio in their home with a beautiful view overlooking the ocean? Does that seem fair? She's just trying to survive, perhaps because of just where she was born or the ethnicity she has, to just get food in her mouth. Does she have enough time to think about meditation? Does she have enough time to think about God? Does she have as much time as I have to stop and meditate because of the position I have and the access I have to the resource to do that thing? Is that fair? It's awfully quiet in here. Is everybody okay? Everyone check their pulse real quick. I want to make sure we're still alive. I don't want to lose you. But here's the thing. Circumstances in life can make it more difficult to connect with God. There's no doubt about it. Have you ever tried to meditate when a fly is trying to crawl on your nose? Circumstances in life can definitely make it more difficult to try to connect with God. But those circumstances don't make God any less present, close, or with us. God is still right here. It is these bricks that we have built between us and God that make this idea that God is so distant. And mind is the great equalizer on the spiritual path. Because it is my mind that is building these bricks. It is my consciousness that society is building these bricks upon. So here's the hope that has given me hope about the unfairness of the world and the system. Has anyone ever known or met or known of somebody who seemed to have it all, but yet did not have any connection to God whatsoever? Has anyone ever known or heard of someone like that? Now, on the flip side, has anyone ever known someone who didn't seem to have much at all in terms of the pleasures of society, but yet had an incredible connection to God? That's the balance and the beauty of God. Having all those luxuries and all those pleasures doesn't necessarily give you more access to God. So when we have those, we actually have a duty to make sure that everyone has access to God. That we make a system where we all have equal access to not building these walls between us and this experience of bliss, that we don't have a society that's actually trying to suppress people so they live a life where they're so distracted by the suffering that they don't have time to think about God. So we can start to level the playing field. Recognizing that God hasn't left, God hasn't gone anywhere, God is right here, but it is us, our thinking, and our society that has created these barriers between us and God. Are we following me? Did I make any sense so far? Blink twice if you're still awake. Well, I hope you recognize this. We create our life experiences through our way of thinking. How you perceive the world to be is the world you will live in. How you perceive the world to be is the world you will live in. But that's easier said than done, is it not? Just change the way you think, and your life's going to be better. All of a sudden, love those politicians you can't stand, and you're going to have a better life. And you're like, well, I kind of will stop right there. That's the truth of it. The person you might find most detestable, if you can love them, your own life will become more loving. You'll have more love in your life. That's the reality of it. But that's not to say that the suppressed individuals just need to change their thinking. Because when you wake up in the morning and someone is pushing down on your head, it makes it much more difficult to change your thinking. That's why those of us who are in a place of affluence, those of us who are in a place of blessing, we have a right and we have a duty to help lift those hands off of people's heads so we can all stand together in an equal place with an equal starting line of this journey towards God. These are our 5 basic unity principles. Do these look remotely familiar to you? I hope. Well, I sit in meditation a lot, and sometimes I just have something come to me. And I was thinking about our 5 basic unity principles and this path to God, this journey to God. And how do these really apply to that journey? I just had this essence, if you want to call it a voice, an intuition, a thought come to me, flip them upside down. And I realized we've been reading them wrong. The first step on your spiritual journey is step 5. It's the bottom, working your way up. Knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them. If you do not first commit yourself to actually do what you're going to learn, the rest of it is useless. If you have not committed yourself to do a daily spiritual practice based on the tools you're going to learn in the next 4 steps, they're completely useless. If you're not actually going to do it, then we're just showing up and we're debating about all these amazing things and we're talking about them, conceptualizing. We sound so intellectual and we've got these fancy words we can use, but it's meaningless. If you have not first dedicated yourself to say, what I'm about to learn, I'm going to actually do, then forget the rest of it. There is nothing the other 4 principles that will do to your life that are going to help you at all. They can do nothing for you if you have not committed to actually use them. So the first and most important step on this journey is to say, I am going to do what I learn in unity. Not just on Sunday morning, every single day of my life. If I expect to reap the rewards of what these powerful teachings have, I've got to actually first commit to do what they're asking me to do. Are you following me? Otherwise, it's just mental playground. And we have done a lot of this, mental gymnastics in unity, for decades. A lot of talking about how amazing our principles are. a lot of theorizing about it, a lot of workshopping about it, but not a lot of doing about it. And the world is waiting for us to do something about it. Are you with me? The applause is supposed to get 1, not 5. I'm only working my way up there. So if you actually committed yourself to do this work, and by the way, any spiritual path on this planet begins with, are you committed to doing this? Any great guru is not going to take on a student unless that student says, I am 100% in, I have handed you my life, here we go. If they're like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. Did you see Jesus' disciples? The ones who were like, I'm kind of thinking about it. He's like, go, let the dead bury the dead. But when you're ready to do what we're going to do, you're going to give up everything you thought you knew about life, and you're going to follow me. Then the next step, I start learning the tools. There's power in affirmative prayer, meditation, and spiritual practice, which we believe increases our awareness of God. This doesn't mean absolutely anything unless you do it every single day of your life. If you have not committed to doing this practice every single day of your life, then just erase that. It doesn't exist to you. They talk about it takes 10,000 hours to master a musical instrument. You ever heard that? 10,000 hours. How long do you think it takes to master life? 10,001 maybe? It means I've got to dedicate myself to doing this practice every single day. A musician doesn't just get to practice their instrument when they want to get to it, if they want to be great. So we start learning the tools in unity. We start learning these things that are going to help us progress through life, to change our circumstances, because we've seen the benefits for those greats in unity that have done this work. We know the opportunity that's there. And if we actually started doing that work and we were dedicated to it every single day, we would recognize that we create our life experiences through our way of thinking. And our thinking would start to change, because more of our day would be spent doing this practice than it would be trying to figure out what's wrong with everybody else in the world. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with this system? What's wrong with that person? What's wrong with this group of people? Why don't they get it like I get it? No, I'd understand through my prayer, meditation, my spiritual practice that it's my thinking that is creating my experience. And if I really started changing the way that I think, if I really started changing the way that I perceive the world to be, because my perception becomes my reality, if I start to change that, I couldn't help but realize that we are spiritual beings, created in God's image. The Spirit of God lives in each person, therefore all people are inherently good. All people, though? Come on now. All people? Do you realize how much work you'd have to do in step 1, 2, 3 on the bottom here to really get to the place where you recognize that all people are inherently good? You've all had a person just pop into your head right now, and you're like, no, not that person. All people, regardless of what your perception of who they are, all people are inherently good. You could not get to the top one here, number 1, until you have actually recognized that we are all children of God and all people are inherently good. It would take a dedication to this practice. It would take actually doing this practice. It would actually take changing the way you think to be able to recognize all people as inherently good. And if you could do that, you recognize that God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere. God is in this microphone stand. God is in this microphone box. God is in this carpet. God is in this chair. God is in this air. God is in this tree. God is in you. God is in me. All you would see is God. Can you imagine being in a place where all you saw was God? Do you think that's a little bit different than the life you're living right now? You all think you're already there, don't you? Can you see how you would have to be doing all these things to get to a place where the only thing you saw in existence was God? Tragedy would not even be a word in your vocabulary. All you saw was God. Of course, you'd have to have dedicated yourself to a spiritual practice, daily spiritual practice. Of course, you'd have to learn the tools on how to do that. Of course, you'd have to learn how to change your thinking so you see the world differently. Of course, you'd then have to recognize everyone as a child of God, inherently good, in order to be recognized there is only God. But we want to kind of just jump to number one and go, it's all good, it's all God. I get it. I get it. And then I'm going to go home, I'm going to turn on the news and just scream at the TV for the next 15 hours. You realize when you are on this journey, it's not that just your mind changes, it's that your life changes. What you eat changes. What you wear changes. The type of people you associate with changes. Your hobbies changes. You're no longer the person you used to be, so how could you be still living the same exact life you used to be living? Where you invest your money in changes. What you believe to be inspiring changes. And who you see in need changes. Because you are fundamentally changing the core of your being. And less are you judging the world around you, and more you are becoming a part of the world around you. So where am I going? Right? I didn't just come here on church on Sunday to check a box. Some of you may. I don't know. I didn't see your box list when you came in. I don't think you are, though. I think if you made the effort to be here, you want to go somewhere. You want to get somewhere. You want to see something change. You want to feel something. We're going somewhere. When our founders started this movement, they set a very high bar for students in unity. Am I kidding? They set a very high bar for us students in unity. What they were accomplishing at the time they were doing the work they were doing 100 years ago. I imagine they were looking forward and going, what our students will be doing 100 years from now, because at that time they were healing their own bodies with their consciousness. They must have foreseen that 100 years after that, 100 years down the road, through that much practice and spiritual growth, what are these people going to be doing? Just floating in and out of rooms? Be light beings? I can only imagine Charles and Myrtle going, 100 years from now, do you know what this work is going to look like? They were big thinking, and they were authentic being. They thought big. They weren't like, let's gather 6 people and talk about it. They're like, how do we reach the entire planet? That's how they thought on a daily basis. How do we reach the entire planet? But after their passing, slowly over time, this is my personal perception. This is not the organization's perception. My personal perception is we lowered the bar. We became little thinkers and little beers. We lost that essence and that passion and that drive of our founders who wanted to touch every being on the planet with this message. And we started thinking about, well, how's my little group doing? How am I doing? Do I have enough? Am I prosperous? Do I have the things I want? Am I living the life I want? And we stopped thinking about, is everyone prosperous? Is everyone living the life that they should be living? Are we working to create a planet that is equitable in this experience? We lowered the bar and we stopped talking about being able to manifest things into your life. We stopped talking about being able to change the course of how you physically feel just by thinking differently. We lowered the bar a little bit. We just said, well, if you show up, that's okay. We're not actually going to hold you accountable to these principles. You don't actually have to dedicate yourself to a spiritual practice. You don't actually have to do prayer and meditation. You don't actually have to change the way you think. It's all okay. We started with an all okay. It's not all okay. Does anyone feel like everything's okay in the world right now? Is this a time to stick our heads in the sand and just go, blah, 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 it's not happening? The only thing that changes the course of the direction of this planet is consciousness. There are amazing organizations out there, but they can do nothing if we don't change the consciousness that created the problems that we face today. And you know who's in the business of consciousness shift? Unity. If you're looking what might be a valuable organization to invest in and support, if we're not addressing the consciousness that created the problems we have today, we will have those problems again. Have you seen history repeating itself? Because no one said, wait, we need to address the consciousness that created that war. We need to address the consciousness that thought this was a good idea to poison our oceans. We need to address the consciousness that thought this was a good idea to tear down all of our rainforest. We've got to change that consciousness, or it'll always pop up in a new way doing the same old things it always did. And if you're not supporting organizations that change the consciousness, how do we expect to have a different future? And where does consciousness start? Here. I have got to take my life to task. I have to show up as an emissary of consciousness shift for anyone to believe there's any hope for this to happen. Jesus said, very truly, I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact will do greater works than these, because I am going to the Father, because I am going to my higher consciousness, because I am doing the work. Part of unity is based on this foundational concept. We don't believe just Jesus did this stuff. We believe we're supposed to be doing equal to what this beautiful being did and greater than. Not a lot of organizations take that stance. That's a pretty high bar. Would you agree? Not that there was this special character 2,000 years ago that did these magical things that we have no attachment to. No, this was actually supposed to be the average human being. This was supposed to be your everyday experience. And somehow we, as souls on this journey, forgot that. And Jesus is like, hello, folks. Hello, folks. You're supposed to be doing greater works than I have done. And the founders of this organization believed that, and they said, let's do the work to see if this is possible. And they created miraculous things to happen among them and their contemporaries. Let's just touch into what they saw for us, what they maybe thought we'd be doing today in the organization. Charles said, out of the air we may manufacture the things we eat and wear. This is not a flight of fancy. It's not an assumption of theoretical metaphysics that we may be able to make our food and clothing from the air, but a logical conclusion that follows the understanding of God as the omnipresent source of all that appears. If God is all there is, how could I ever have lack? Myrtle, the mother of unity, said, there is no limit to the so-called miracles that can be performed by those who consecrate themselves wholly to do the will and the work of Christ. And she puts miracles in quotes, I believe, because she's saying what you call a miracle, I called breakfast. These miracles are supposed to be your everyday experience. Not some happenstance that all of a sudden magically happened to one special person, but all of us living a miraculous experience every single day. Are we ready to think big again and live authentically again in unity? I think we are. I see the potential for that to happen. I would like to see us pick up where our founders left off and run with a baton into an area that only they could have imagined to be possible, because that is exactly what the world is asking us to do right now. And if you're waiting for aliens to come and fix what's going on, maybe, maybe not, I don't know. They're probably taking bets on that in Vegas. But the point is, it's far more likely that we are the solution to our own problems. But if we are willing to dedicate ourselves to this practice and do the work and change our thinking and see people differently and recognize God as all there is, I don't know how it happens otherwise. So fortunately, we are sitting in a room right now in a message that was designed for this time in the world today. What we're doing right here, right now, is exactly what is needed in the world today. Sometimes I get lost in thinking, how can I tackle this giant egg of a problem that's happening in the world? There's just too much going on. And I remember, it's irrelevant. It's consciousness. All of it comes back to consciousness. And my consciousness is connected to your consciousness, and I'm working on my consciousness, and I'm helping you work on your consciousness. We're all interconnected, so it does start with me. And that is the blessing of this path. So I hope you're fired up. I hope you're ready for this journey, because I'm ready for this journey, and I'm working with you, and that is the truth as I experience it. Thank you.